Going on, guys? Jim, the game guru, your video game and board game nerd. Today's video, I'm going to go back to my roots. I am going to try to take all the presentational stuff out, all the music, all the game description reading that I've done in some of my other compilation videos. Kind of go back to my roots and kind of explain some of my experiences that I've had with certain games. And in this video particularly, it's going to be a list of 20 games that I find are unique on the Nintendo Switch. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Let's go ahead and start off with the very first game, Katamari Damacy Reroll. This game is a port. Yes, it is a port. But I feel like it is an absolutely amazing game. Completely unique. In this game, you have the King of Cosmos that has shattered the stars in the sky. And it is up to you, the prince, that he sends down to the earth to roll a Katamari ball and to pick up all this junk. And what you do is you go these levels, you pick up all this junk in these rooms of houses. You make this big Katamari ball. The King of Cosmos will end up taking that ball, taking the junk from it, and create a star out of it. Some of the stages do get kind of challenging because he'll ask you to make a really, really big ball. Trying to do that in the amount of time, it's like, oh my god, it gets a little frantic at the very end. But man, this game is so good. It's so good. It's so super cute. The music is fantastic. There have only been 2 games ever since I've owned the Switch that have made me go to my music service and look up the soundtrack. Actually, I should say 3. One of them was Rocket League. The other one was The Mummy Demastered. Fantastic musical soundtrack to that game. And Katamari Damacy has a fantastic musical soundtrack that fits the game perfectly. Every single level, the music and the level just go hand in hand. And you can't get any more unique than being in a game where you're rolling a ball, collecting junk. Absolutely fantastic. So let's go to game number 2 on the list, Panzer Dragoon. This one here, I feel like, is one of those games for the people that are more nostalgic to Panzer Dragoon and the lore of Panzer Dragoon. If you haven't really been around video games playing the older Panzer games, this one may not resonate very well with you. But for me, I played Panzer Dragoon back on the Sega Saturn. I absolutely loved it. This being the remake to it. There are not a whole lot of levels, but it is it's unique because you don't find this style of game anymore. It used to be very common back in the day, but now having a game where you're like on a kind of like on a rail and you can look around 360 degrees and kind of shoot at different objects as they come to you is pretty cool. And I have this nostalgic feeling for it just because of my history with the game. In this game, you go through and you try to end up defeating another dragon before that dragon gets to a particular destination, which I believe is a tower. Not very many levels, but it's a fantastic pickup, especially at a cheap price. I ended up picking up this on sale for like $2 or something. Normally it goes for, I think it's $29, and most of the games on this list are going to be $29 and under, with a few, like 1 or 2 exceptions. But yeah, Panzer Dragoon, great pickup. Okay, the third game, Octahedron. Octahedron is very unique to platforming. I played this not too long ago. It's very, very colorful. It is a super colorful game. It kind of reminds me of Geometry Wars with its colors, because it's just so bright and vibrant. And what you are is you're just protagonist in this game where you're like in this gloomy, dark world, but then you get sucked into like this digital world, and you have to gotta go through the levels, and I'm assuming you end up escaping eventually. I haven't actually beaten the game yet. I've only gotten through the first world. But yeah, it's fun. It's definitely unique. It's in this whole platforming genre because you're not jumping through the levels and jumping onto things and stomping on things and jumping over gaps that are already predefined. You will have open areas and you'll have to actually create platforms as you jump. So you jump, you create a platform, you jump, create another platform, jump, create another platform, and you can only create so many platforms before you have to touch the ground again. Every time you touch the ground, you regenerate your ability to create new platforms. It's absolutely tough to get all of the objectives on each of the levels. Each level you have to get certain, like these certain gems or whatever, and find them in the level. You can only get hit so many times, etc. And these kind of objectives make the game very, very, very difficult. But yeah, it's definitely unique. I mean, it is unique as you can get with a platforming game. The fourth game, Cuphead. So you take the shooter genre and you take platforming and you mash them together. And then it's not enough that you do that, but on top of that, you put a 1930s cartoon theme on top of it. I don't think there's gonna be another game that's gonna be like this, unless they came out with a sequel or something eventually. As it stands, it's probably the only game of its kind. Graphics are just phenomenal. Controls are really, really good. I was actually surprised the controls. I thought the controls would be kind of maybe loosey-goosey or a little weird, but they're actually really, really tight. And in this game, you have to go collect souls for the devil because you're indebted to the devil playing casino games. And the game is basically like nothing but boss fights. And it's actually pretty challenging because in order to get the souls, you have to play the game on normal. So this is a game that you could play with like a 10-year-old or maybe a 12-year-old or whatever. But if you do, you have like you can actually lessen the difficulty to be more of a simple difficulty. But if you do that, then you won't be able to achieve be able to get the souls of those bosses. And so the game does put a strict mandatory, you must beat it on normal in order to get the stuff you need to beat the game. And then there are other levels that are like running guns, and running guns will allow you to go through and collect money so that you can use in the shop to collect power-ups. Super awesome game, Cuphead. Fifth game, Abzu. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. I don't know. I'm saying Abzu because it looks like that's how it's said. This game, no enemies, no bosses, no lore really, no dialogues, no nothing. And it is a unique experience because of the fact that it doesn't have a lot of crazy stuff. It's just about the experience. You're in the water, you're going from one starting point to the end, and you just go through these underwater environments, and that's all you do. It's all about the exploring. Zero replay value to it. So it's probably one of those games you definitely want to get on a monster sale because of the fact that you can't play it again. Because once you've gone through the experience, it's pretty much over. And it's not very long either. I think it's like a couple hours. But it is. I've been enjoying it. I think it's a very unique title in what it offers and the experience that it gives you. Sixth, Immortal Phoenix Rising. So the reason why I have this one as on this game, on this unique list, is because it's not so much on what the individual traits of this game has that makes it unique. It's what all those traits together deliver. I feel like the combat is more of like a God of War style. I mean, some people I guess could say it's like Zelda. I feel like it's more of a God of War with like the combos when you're spinning around and swinging your weapons around. The world has got a different style of rendering than Breath of the Wild or any other 3D world. It's got kind of its own unique little twist to it. The rifts, I guess some people would say they're kind of like the shrines in Breath of the Wild. I feel like they've done a good enough job that they've actually changed the rifts to be that they look different. They have different types of puzzles. I like the fact that you can get different equipment, different abilities. You can ride different mounts in the game. And it uses Greek mythology. And there's not a whole lot of games that use Greek mythology. When those games do use Greek mythology, they're usually like hardcore, serious. I'm a god, and I will strike you down, and all this like powerfulness and stuff. And this game, the gods they're kind of laughable. They're kind of like jokesters, and they just joke around. And the writing is really good. It's funny. I like the character models because the character models in the game are completely different than you see in most other games. So when you take all the character models, you take the joking Greek mythology, you take the God of War, you take the fighting style, and then you take the unique 3D world, the way it looks as far as rendering. It make all that together makes it feel like a very unique style of game. The only thing that I cannot stand about Immortals Phoenix Rising is Ubisoft. This game will require you to create an account, and Ubisoft for some reason wants to be like EA with all their microtransaction BS that they're pushing. That is probably the only downside. Besides that, the price is probably a little too high for some people. I feel like it's an awesome game even for the price. But yeah, if Ubisoft would be kind enough not to try to interrupt in our game experience by putting their microtransaction crap for like their costume stores and forcing us to create an account in order to play the game would be absolutely fantastic. Alright, 7, Yoku's Island Express. I've had this on other videos in the past. I love Yoku's Island Express. Super different. You're not going to find another game that has Metroidvania plus pinball. Those two together, it's very, very hard to find. It's a great looking indie title. I like the way the world is. The controls are fantastic. The way you move the pinball around. It's one of the first games that I purchased for my Switch, and I couldn't stop. I had to go through until I beat the game, until I get not just beat the game, but 100% it, and find every single room because it's that fantastic. I love Yoku's Island Express, and I pray, please let them come out with the Yoku's Island Express 2 one day. That'd be great. Nowhere Profit is the next game on this list. This is a roguelike where you're in this kind of apocalyptic world, and you have to go through with this caravan of people and travel across this landscape, and then eventually get to a place where like this, I don't know if it's a ship or something has kind of crashed, and then this crypt has like this core in there that eventually you end up going across the land to this crypt, to the core, and fighting a boss at the end of it. It is a card-based game, but the mechanics of this card game are amazing. I just love the gameplay is just, I don't know, it's very unique. It's hard to describe because instead of like a top and bottom, a lot of card games are like that where you're fighting from top to bottom or bottom to top or whatever. This one is a side-to-side card game. You have 2 decks. You have your caravan deck, and then you have your deck with leader cards. Those leader cards are like your special abilities, and you basically just battle whatever opponents you're facing as you're going through the world. And the world is very choose your own path kind of way. So if you go one place, then the likelihood of going back and coming back around and going to another place is probably very slim, because as you go from place to place, it costs resources. So you got to make the right move as far as how much resources to spend. As you're traveling, you got to make the right move as far as how many resources to spend. As you're buying things, like whether it's weapons or whatever. But yeah, I love Nowhere Profit. It's a great game, great roguelike. It does take a long time between runs. So a lot of roguelikes will have runs for like 30-40 minutes, maybe a little longer depending on how far you go. This game will actually have runs that are more like in this few hours. That's how long I'm not joking. Few hours. That's how long the runs are in this game. Okay, the next game, number 9, is Monster Sanctuary. Monster Sanctuary is unique. Why? Because it takes Metroidvania and combines it with something like Pokemon. I don't think there's going to be another game like this anytime soon. I mean, it's not that I know of, but having you go through this little world and you're picking up creatures as you're fighting these battles. You end up finding eggs, and when you get those eggs, you can hatch them, and you have creatures. And then as you use the creatures in your main party, they gain experience. All the weapons and equipment and stuff you get in this game they all go towards your creatures. And all the battles, everything is creature based, just like Pokemon, where you throw out your creatures and they're fighting. Same type of thing. I was a little worried that they would probably mess up the controls as far as the Metrovania aspect of going through the world, the jumping and everything else. But they did actually a fantastic job on it. I like the home base. I like the menu screens. It's very, very easy to use. And the fighting is fun. So yeah, I highly recommend Monster Sanctuary. It's a fantastic Metrovania with a twist if you're into that kind of that Pokemon stuff. Okay, number 10, Hand of Fate 2. Man, this is probably one of the most unique games on this list. It is choose your own adventure, and I don't know if you ever remembered, if you're like me and when you were a little child you end up reading choose your own adventure books. I mean, that was really big back in the day when I was a kid. I don't think it's big nowadays. I mean, kids now are like on tablets and phones, and they probably don't even care about it. So that choose your own adventures probably died. But in this game, you have like kind of these mini campaigns, and in these mini campaigns they involve specific characters. In those campaigns you move your pawn. You're kind of like sitting at this table and you move your pawn over these cards, and as you go over these cards, the cards flip and they reveal the story. So the story evolves as depending on what direction you go and where you choose to go first. And as you're encountering different parts of the story, you can actually make choices in those different encounters. And based on what you choose, you'll have a different outcome. So there's where the choose your adventure part comes in. And then there's times where you're actually fighting people. And when you fight them and you get in these battles, whether you're fighting other soldiers or whether you're fighting zombies or whatever, the game will zoom you down into like this 3D kind of arena style thing where all your weapons are the weapons you earned through your adventures in that mini campaign. All your armor, same thing, whatever you've earned in there. And it's really cool because you can control in this little 3D third person view your character, and you're actually doing real combat and like live action combat. And then once you get done that live action combat, it'll zoom you back to your table where you continue through your journey. Absolutely unique, nothing like it. It's got a great Metacritic score. It's a shame. It's one of those games that a whole lot of people don't really talk about too much. Next game, Marble It Up. I used to play a lot of Marble Madness back in the day on the NES. And that game was very isometric. It was isometric. You're a marble. You're trying to go through a level. You go from a start point to an end. So in this game, same type of thing. You go from a start to an end. But the difference is that you're in this third-person view, but you're kind of like behind your marble. And it's almost like a first-person view, but still a third-person view because you can still see your marble. But you can look around the level you're in. Everything's in full 3D. When you're moving the marble, it sounds fantastic. Like picture like a metal ball or like even like a regular marble rolling on granite or rolling on concrete or something. If you've ever rolled a marble on concrete, it makes that real, especially smooth, like buttery smooth concrete. It's got that really distinct sound, and they actually have that sound in the game. Depending on what terrain you're rolling your marble on, you'll actually have different sound, which is really interesting. The game does not utilize the controller very much. It uses pretty much the analog stick plus 2 buttons, and 1 button being jump, and then you have 1 button that you use for your a power-up. I really wish they used more of the controller and gave you more powers in the game. But, for what they give you, it's actually pretty good. I enjoy Marble It Up. I think it's a fantastic game. But then again, I love Marble Madness. But if you like that kind of game, then it's a great choice for you. Okay, next on the list, Wonderful 101. This game is about going through a kind of like hey, we're the superheroes battling evil dudes. So kind of like that generic plot. And I ended up picking this up when it first released on the Switch. And I believe this is actually a Wii U port, if I'm not mistaken. And what you do is you control several heroes, and as you go through like this campaign, you'll fight a bunch of guys, and you'll gain heroes along the way. And the more heroes you get, then they kind of go into like this big blob of heroes as you're moving them all around. And you'll actually end up, if you're using the Pro Controller, you'll actually use the right analog stick to make gestures to transform your block of heroes into a specific weapon. So like you can either transform them into a sword, or transform them into like a big red fist, or transform them into like one of the heroes is a gun. It's like a big green gun. And depending on what hero's ability you choose, what weapon you choose, can make the difference of how well you do in a particular level, because certain bad guys are easily defeated with certain weapons. I find the writing in the game to be pretty humorous. I think the graphics are pretty good. It is missing a little something to the game. And I think that the thing it's missing is it's very arcade-like. And I think the thing that's missing is that it doesn't have like this big wow factor. And I'm like, oh my god, that was so awesome. I didn't encounter too many parts in that game with that. But other than that, I think it's a cool. It is a little expensive too. Like when I picked it up, it was like $59. I'm sure it probably has not dropped at all since then. Maybe it has. I don't know. I haven't seen the price lately on it. Next game, 13th Valkyria Chronicles. Valkyria Chronicles. This is another game that I passed up back in the day. I ended up finally getting it on the Switch. Absolutely love Valkyria Chronicles. It looks beautiful. You're in this world where you get this evil empire that tries to conquer everything, and then you become part of like a rebellious army. And it is a tactical game. The intro to the game is amazing. It reminds me of like a Final Fantasy movie. Music is not bad in it, but I think where this game really shines is I feel like you're in like this anime world with like this nice, softly rendered landscape around you. And the thing that makes it so unique is that you can actually move around the battlefield with your character, whichever character is up next in your squad, with your character in like in this 3D third person view, and just take in the entire environment and just kind of move them to where you need to go before you actually perform your action. And that to me, I think like I've never experienced that in a tactical game before. A lot of tactical games are either overhead or they're isometric, and you have to move your character first, and then after you engage with your character, then they'll kind of zoom in and have like and do like their action, whatever their action they're performing. But for this to have like that 3D movement and freedom up front, and before you do your action, and being able to kind of really absorb the environment around you is just wonderful. Absolutely love Valkyria Chronicles. I'm definitely going to end up picking the other ones up on the Switch too, because that's how much I love this one. Child of Light is the next game. So in this game, you're a protagonist that kind of is in this other dimension, other world. I don't know if it's the land of the dead or just a parallel world or whatever, but you're trying to get back to the world of the living. The graphics in this game are completely they're different than anything ever. I feel like it's a fairy tale inside like a watercolor fairy tale. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. It is turn-based combat when you engage into when you run into a lot of the enemies. The enemies, as far as the models of the enemies and kind of like the creature design and the design of your character, I think everything looks just spot on. Being turn-based is not completely turn-based, because sometimes, well, it is turn-based, but it's not like you have to wait in complete total sequence. Okay, so like, oh, these 4 people go in order, and then these other 4 enemies will go in order, and these other 4, and then your 4 guys will go again. It's very, it depends on the speed of your character. Some characters move really, really fast. They'll get multiple turns, and then some characters don't. Some enemies are the same way. They're really fast. And in this game, you have like this little wisp character, and that character will kind of float along with you, and you can actually use the right analog to move that character to collect certain like little light points. You can actually use them to hover over enemies and slow them down in the middle of the battle so that they don't have as many turns, so that way your characters can have more turns to attack. But Child of Light is something else. It's something different, and if you want to be like in this like fairy tale thing and experience a good story, and you like turn-based combat, then Child of Light could be a good choice for you. Next game, Moving Out. Moving Out, I've had this on my co-op video. The reason why I have this on this unique list is because a lot of the arcade games, a lot of like indie arcade style games, are pretty much rely on your own solo effort. So even though you can be part of a team, if your solo effort is stronger than any of your other teammates, you can actually help complete most of the objectives in those arcade games, right? But this game, in Moving Out, you're only as good as your collective team. And what you have to do is you have different missions where you go to houses and you have to move the furniture out of the house into a truck, right? And you have to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible in order to get the highest rating. And it's really, really, really challenging because you need to be on the same page with your partner. You need to be able to move the things out quickly, throw the things like the beds or couches through the windows quickly. You need to be able to move fridges out through the door quickly. And it's your movement with your partner and how you guys grab the different items and take them out together means everything in this game. And I don't feel like there's a lot of games that actually concentrate on having two people work simultaneously together in order to achieve perfection. So number 16th is Pampan. Pampan is a puzzle game. It's ultra cheap. It's only $5. Ultra cheap game. It's a puzzle game where you're in this isometric world, and you're a character that's on this air balloon. The air balloon crashes, and after it crashes to the ground, you need to go through the surrounding area and find items in order to fix your air balloon so you can go back home. In the puzzles, this game has zero hand holding, like zip zitch nil. It's tough. It's not a very long game. It's only a couple hours long, but it could actually stretch to be about 6 or 7 hours if you're having a tough time finding solutions to the puzzles and you don't want to look them up. If you concentrate and you really are dedicated to finding the solutions to the puzzles yourself, then it could take you a while. Some of the puzzles on there are really, really hard. Some of them you can actually solve pretty easily, and then there's some that you stumble by accident and you're able to solve them by accident. You're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know what I did there, but I got through it. But it's not a puzzle game where you go in sequence. It's like if you're in a room and then you get an item there, you have to go to another room to solve a puzzle, but that room could be completely, like, it could be far away. So you can end up going from one side of the map to the other, then solving a puzzle there, grabbing the item there, and then come back to another part of the map where you have to solve a puzzle using that other item that you got from that other area. So it utilizes the entire map back and forth. You're going to be going back and forth, and the puzzles are actually really, really challenging. But for a $5 game that gives you, it's got a different artistic style to it. It's just unique. I've never seen anything like that game. So it's Pampan at number 16. Number 17 is Disc Room. This one, nothing special as far as the graphics side of the game. You are on this disc facility, and you go from room to room trying to solve objectives. And there are a bunch of objectives in there, and from either staying alive the longest you can or getting killed by as many different types of discs as possible. It's actually a really tough game. I mean, there are some rooms where I'm just like, how in the hell can you possibly even do that? You do pick up special power-ups along the way, like you'll have abilities where you can clone yourself, dash through discs, slow down time. I think it's a fun game. It kind of reminds me of it reminds me of Smash TV, back in the day, but without having big enemies come through doors and you're fighting them. It's not a shooter. It's more of a, you go from room to room and you're just avoiding discs and you're trying to survive and complete objectives like that. I really enjoyed Disc Groom. I think it's definitely unique on the list. It's, again though, visually wise, it's nothing spectacular. 18, Part-Time UFO. Part-Time UFO, super cute, great music. It is a great game to play with kids. So if you want a unique title that you can play with kids, Part-Time UFO is the game to pick up. So in this game, what you do is you go from level to level. You have a UFO that with a crane, and you'll have to do different things, like either create a building by stacking certain objects and creating something in a certain amount of time, or maybe stacking up cheerleaders to reach a certain height. Then there's ones that you have to actually collect different types of fish, or put these type of objects on a truck and stack them into a crate. There are some cosmetic things you can pick up along the way. But it's meant to be a really simple game. You go through these different levels, you satisfy the criteria, and then you can get things like different types of UFOs that some of them look like different creatures, and sometimes you can get like things like scarves or hats that you can put on the UFOs. But music is great. It is a pixel art style game, but I absolutely love it. I love playing with that game with my daughter. She loves it. But it is very very kid centric. So maybe having two adults doing co-op on it, maybe not as fun. But if you're with a child, I think you'll have a good time. Golf Story is number 19. So a lot of golf games are 3D based, right? They're very serious. You have these PGA games that are 3D, and maybe like realistic world. Sometimes there's golf games where they're 3D, but they're not realistic world. They're kind of like cartoony in a way, I guess. But this Golf Story is one that does not take itself serious at all. You're a protagonist in there. You're trying to get better at golf. You start at a really dump golf resort, and then eventually what happens is you make your way around, and you can get to these other different golf resorts that are. And then some that are prestigious and some that are they're just wacky. Some of them are like prehistoric, crazy. Some of them are like in this resort that has like a bunch of crazy wind, and just it's not a realistic game at all when it comes to golf. It's very pixel art, top down. There's times where you're going around the resort and just hunting objects down. There's times where like maybe you're using your golf club to hit beach balls onto a crab or something. Or sometimes maybe just trying to shoot a golf ball, make a hole in one on these holes that are just out on an island somewhere. It's kind of wacky. It's like a wacky story, wacky game. It's fun. It is so much fun. It's one of those games I picked up early on when I picked up my Switch. I feel like it's a good time. I really enjoyed this game. I know they're coming out with another one. I think it's called Sports Story, but I really hope that they add some more like a DLC to this game. I would love to have them expand Golf Story more. I've had a great time with it. It was kind of buggy when it first came out, but I'm sure they fixed that by now. So that is number 19, Golf Story. And number 20, the last game on the list, is Thronebreaker. There should be no secret why this one is unique, because it uses Gwent. Gwent is a unique card game only to the Witcher franchise. I've only played Witcher 3 besides Thronebreaker, and I hope they do bring Witcher the first 1 and 2 to the Switch. That would be amazing. But I've only played Witcher 3, and in Witcher 3, there are times where you can take breaks and you can play certain people in different towns to the game of Gwent, and you can actually try to win their cards. So CD Projekt Red took the game of Gwent, it made a different story within the Witcher universe. And in this story, you basically go around. Everything is based on the game of Gwent. All your monster interactions are based on the game of Gwent. All your interactions against soldiers. Then you have puzzle games where you have certain battlefields that you have to make certain amount of moves. If you don't make those certain amount of moves, well, you lose no matter what. It's tough. It's tough. Gwent is easy to get. It's easy to learn to play, but it's also one of those tough. It's one of those games that's tough to master, and I know that's so cliche. Like a lot of people say that now. Oh, it's easy to pick up, tough to master. Yeah, I get it. But it's true in this case. It is tough to master, but it's a fun game. I like the art style in this game. It's not going for your realistic point of view. It's not going for like a 3D like The Witcher 3 was. It's kind of top down, a little bit of indie look to it. But it's very, very colorful. I like the dialogue in the story is fantastic, and your main protagonist in this one is the queen. You're going around with the queen and directing orders, and yeah, and I am enjoying it. It's a little light on the exploration, so that's one thing that I would have to say is a negative to it. There's not a whole lot of exploring. I mean, yeah, you can walk around and pick up resources and stuff as you go through the map, but you can't. There's no like real secrets or anything crazy that you kind of discover. You kind of what you see is what you get, and the encounters you see are the encounters that you'll end up having. But yeah, regardless, Thronebreaker is a great game, and it's pretty cheap. It's like $19. I think most of the games on this list are 29 and under, except for two of them. I'm gonna say Wonderful 101 and Immortal's Phoenix are up there beyond the $30 price range, but I think everything else on this list is probably about $29 or $19 and lower. But yeah, this is my 20 games that I feel are super unique on the Switch. I would love to follow up this list again with another 20 later on, once I start encountering some more games that I found are pretty unique, and hopefully add to this. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this list. Again, I try to scale back and kind of do what I did with my other videos, where I take not so much of a game presenter and kind of do more of a stripping out the music and kind of doing a more genuine kind of experience approach rather than listing off a bunch of games in their descriptions. That's it, guys. 20 games unique on Nintendo Switch. I will see you later.